Christmas has come early to all Americans this year. The filibuster is dead. Folks, I'm trying to think if there has been anything in the last year, anything since Mitt Romney's humiliating defeat at the polls last year that's made me feel as good as I do about what happened in the Senate yesterday with the Democrats finally showing a little spine, standing up to the Republicans and saying, enough with this filibuster nonsense. It looks as though the Obama second term is not going to be canceled. It looks as though the Obama presidency is not going to be whitewashed out of the history books. Finally, some Democrats found a spine. All the inflated language over this issue, the so-called nuclear option in and of itself is absurd. There's nothing in the Constitution saying that there should be 2/3 or 60 votes required by the Senate. You know what majority rule is? It's called democracy. That's what democracy is about. The fact that a little democracy is coming to the United States Senate is a good thing. It means now that we have a Democratic majority, not supermajority, but a Democratic majority means that President Obama can fulfill his constitutional responsibilities, filling the judiciary with judges. This is a fantastic thing. Now, there are a lot of Democrats out there sort of wringing their hands. Oh, but what about when Republicans take over? Don't the Democrats need to be able to have the filibuster to stop the battle Republicans from getting rid of Obamacare and Social Security and goodness knows what? Here's the thing. If we actually get to the point where the Republicans have, say, 51 senators, there's always going to be 8, 9 Democrats who are Democrats in name only, who are conservative and are going to pander to whatever the extremist right wing wants. So I don't see how the filibuster, frankly, really helps Democrats much. Also, I think there's something to be said about having accountability. If citizens want to vote Republicans into the legislature, into the Senate, into the presidency, and those Republicans then take away health care for 40 million Americans, well, maybe those 40 million Americans will be a little more motivated to go out and vote for non-right-wing extremists next time. Maybe they deserve a little lesson. And if a Republican Senate wants to eradicate socialism in the form of Social Security, not that they're going to do that, but if they were to do that, let them. And then the voters who saw their Social Security checks disappear, and all the kids who had to have their parents move back in with them, are going to be extra motivated next time to not vote for conservatives. So I actually think it's good for the body politic to have some accountability. Because right now you can vote for conservative extremists, wackos, and not really feel any pain a lot of the time. You're not aware of how your actions really screw things up. So I think this is going to bring more accountability to government. It's going to bring actual democracy to government. Democracy is founded on the notion, it's deeply embedded, of majority rules. Not an arbitrary number that a bunch of senators thought up one day. 66, 60, why not 75? Why not 99? Why not just say only left-handed senators' votes count? They could do that. The senators can write their own rules. That is in the Constitution. The Senate gets to write its own rules. The rules have been crazy. This is a step towards sanity. And I, for one, think it's a fantastic step. And it does mean, folks, contrary to the wishes of Rush Limbaugh, Fox News, and the Drudge Report, the Obama administration's second term is not being canceled. Now, interesting things coming out of the Wisconsin governor's mansion, the Governor Walker there, who is a bit of a darling to many conservatives. He had some interesting, he's on a book tour right now, he had some interesting things to say earlier this week, things I think are going to come back to haunt him. He said that President Obama and he both have visions for offices, and that the Republicans who were just sniping and being anti-Obama basically are showing no vision, and voters are repulsed by it. I do think he's on to something with Obama, and to a certain extent himself too. I'm no huge fan of Walker. He's no relation of mine as far as I know, although I do have family from that part of the world, so you never know. Even though I don't like Walker, at least he's a guy who's actually governing. He doesn't wake up every morning and say, how can I troll Barack Obama? He actually has to run a state. And I do think he is 100% correct with the idea that the Republicans would be much better off nominating a governor and not a senator. When you look at the history of the Republicans nominating either governors or vice presidents, I can't even tell you the last time they lost a presidential race. It's been so many decades. Whereas you look at their track record of having nominated, I should put the caveat, the governor has to be someone who wasn't such an unmitigated failure that he couldn't run for re-election. If the Republicans nominate a governor who's actually been elected twice, they never lose. Or not in many, many, many generations. Mitt Romney obviously was a governor, but so unpopular, he could not have won re-election in Massachusetts. So you look at the track record of senators for Republicans versus governors and vice presidents who have gotten re-elected, there's simply no comparison whatsoever. Interesting take on Governor Cuomo of New York City, profile in today's New York Times. Talks about how this governor has essentially a love affair with talk radio, and a lot of times small town talk radio stations. And that's where he often puts forth the biggest ideas, policy proposals, and then it gets picked up in social media, and then everyone in Albany, the state capital, they're talking about it. It is a bit of a peculiar strategy for a modern politician. Most politicians, we're told, and there's truth to it, love television, love TV cameras. And Cuomo routinely turns down virtually every single media request he gets. Now, before we get too critical, let's point out he's one of the most popular governors in the country. Has very high approval ratings. And certainly if Hillary Clinton decides not to run for president, he will be well positioned to pick up the big money from New York and mount a serious bid for the presidency. So he is an able and savvy politician. I have my own theory about him, and it's not because I'm one of his advisors. He was so stung by the media attention he received when he first ran for governor. This was back when he had this famous soundbite saying that Pataki did nothing but hold the coat of Giuliani, and essentially, was completely worthless during 9/11, which, by the way, is completely true. But that was the quote that was deemed over the top, played everywhere at every media outlet, and it forced him out of the race. I almost wonder if he's just never gotten over that and never gotten over the media scrutiny. I don't know. Again, his approval ratings are high. He's got lots of money. It certainly looks as though he can win re-election easily and stay in that office. No one can stay indefinitely. 12 years seems to be about the limit for anyone, but it certainly looks like he can stay there for a long time. So I don't want to second guess him too much, but it is a peculiar strategy in this day and age for a high-profile governor to essentially ignore most media and fixate on talk radio. It's working for him, though. Folks, this is truly despicable and disgusting. Conservatives like Charles Krauthammer are trying to say that if John F. Kennedy were alive today, he would be a conservative. This is one of the most insidious things conservatives do routinely, is they constantly are rewriting history to say that anybody people like from the past would have to be a conservative today. And it's just an absurdity. If you want to look back at history, you want to know who a conservative would be? people like George Wallace standing in the schoolhouse blocking blacks from entering. That's what conservatism is about, conserving the status quo of an old white school. Now, this is particularly insidious when conservatives try to glom on to heroes like Martin Luther King Jr., who was not a conservative, would not be a conservative today, was a part of the true left, something we don't even have anymore in this country, was very much in favor of not even liberal economics, but left-wing economics, and was someone who absolutely detested everything conservatives stood for. And to see conservatives slobbering all over his legacy is just utterly disgusting. Also in the news, Governor Rick Scott of Florida, he's still getting bad press for going to a soccer game the other day and getting booed. Quick tip for politicians everywhere: do not have yourself introduced at soccer games. It's simply, or football games or basketball games or any athletic events. People just do not want to think about politicians at sporting events. That's my analysis, and I've never yet seen anyone prove me wrong. Also in the news, George Zimmerman. Now, funny how you don't see conservatives talking about George Zimmerman as much these days, now that he's getting in fights and altercations with wives, girlfriends, you name it. I have a slightly different take, though. Now that this Congressman Trey Radel of Florida is, shall we say, not in peak form with his recent cocaine arrest, the Republican from Southwest Florida, it looks like his days may be numbered in that office. Who will the Republicans run for that congressional seat? I would suggest Zimmerman, George Zimmerman, may be an excellent candidate for the Republican nomination for the U.S. Congress. I mean, let's look at his credentials. Here's somebody who knows where to put women in their place, if you have a conservative mindset, knows what to do to black guys, and certainly seems as though he has the whole Rush Limbaugh ability to have relationships with those who are different down pat. I think that he's a good cultural fit for conservatives these days. So I'm going to start the petition drive right here, right now. George Zimmerman for the Republican nomination for Congress to replace this cocaine congressman. Also in the news, the Cheney family being torn apart. Is there anything better than when conservatives are fighting each other? I don't know anything better than that. One Cheney sister is running for the Senate. The other Cheney sister is gay and in a happy gay marriage. They've always all gotten along swimmingly. And now the Cheney running for the Senate, it's like, oh, of course I oppose gay marriage. I'm for conservative traditional values. The sister's like, what? That's news to me. And well, let's just say I wouldn't want to be at the Thanksgiving table at the Cheney family household this upcoming Thanksgiving. Final bit of news. This is really sticking in my craw. David Schuster, who a lot of liberals like, and I like some of his stuff, he's now tweeting that MSNBC should be ashamed for tolerating Martin Bashir. And Donald Trump is saying Martin Bashir. All these people are bashing Martin Bashir. Look, Martin Bashir has done some sleazy things in his journalistic past regarding Michael Jackson and other things. But he was right on target with his recent comments about Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin says, essentially, anybody who ever has a policy that she doesn't agree with is guilty of an act worse than slavery. Hyperbole, demagoguery, overstatement, idiocy. That's what you come to expect from Sarah Palin. She's living up to her brand. Martin Bashir just pointed out that during slavery, certain slave owners defecated in the mouths of their slaves. So if someone really wants to know what slavery was like, they would perhaps need to experience the same treatment. He wasn't telling people to go kidnap Sarah Palin and forcibly defecate in her mouth. But that's somehow how it's being rewritten, because we live in a world where it's considered not only acceptable, but expected for conservatives to say wild, outlandish, extremist, hyperbolic things about liberals. Look at the entire career of Ann Coulter or Rush Limbaugh. And yet when a Democrat, a liberal, a moderate liberal, wants to say something that's truthful, accurate, fair, and mildly provocative, people act like the sky is falling and the end of the world is here, and it simply cannot be tolerated. I'm sickened by it. And now's the time for all good liberals to stand up for Martin Bashir, watch his show, tell people to watch it, write to MSNBC and say this man deserves a promotion and he deserves a raise. I'm TJ Walker. Program note, be off all next week. Family vacation in North Carolina for Thanksgiving. Hope you have a nice Thanksgiving. Enjoy.